What's up, people? My name is Jerome. You all may know me as Breezy, and we're here live in Edmonton, Alberta, here to talk about the NHL, NHL playoffs. Edmonton is the hub city, and I got a very, very special guest today. His name is KJAM, super fan, Oilers. What's up? How you doing, man?
Doing well, man. Appreciate you having me on.
Had to have you on, man. I could have talked about this myself, but this is one sport that I don't know at all.
There's a lot going on. I think to be fair, it's not that you don't know it at all, but I mean certainly
I know my Oilers.
It's not maybe not your specialty. Certainly,
No.
I spend maybe too much time looking at the Oilers and looking at the NHL. So yeah, I don't know. It's been a busy week. Where would you like to start? What have you been hearing? What do you want to learn more about?
I guess we could start with Edmonton being the hub city.
Yeah. So interesting how that went down. Maybe a little more than 2 weeks ago, it looked like the hub cities were going to be Vegas and Vancouver. And then Vancouver had a little snag last second with how the BC Health authorities wanted to go about monitoring or transitioning the tournament if there were COVID positive results.
Mm-hmm.
And the NHL didn't want to shut it down quite as quickly or quite as much as the BC Health Authority wanted to. If there were certain situations, we don't know all the details about that, but suffice to say, the NHL wasn't happy with the way that they wanted to go about it, and so they moved to other options. Maybe a day or two later, Vegas had a huge spike in terms of their number of COVID cases that they were reporting. Arizona isn't the biggest testing area either. I'm not sure if they're at the bottom or in the middle, but I know they're not way high up per capita. So that means that with everything that was going on, testing results and in some cases lack of testing, that Arizona had a huge spike in COVID cases or Nevada, I should say, had a huge spike in COVID cases.
Mm-hmm.
And Las Vegas didn't seem viable anymore. Word has come out that some of the things that they were extending to the NHL, some of the parameters were changing at the very end too, saying, hey, we couldn't offer you these amenities. We can't provide these kinds of situations that we originally were. Mm-hmm. And that all came around right around or after Vancouver fell out of being a possibility. So at that point, things shifted towards looking towards Toronto first and then Edmonton. Toronto was chosen ultimately because in Canada, the COVID situation is a little bit better.
Yeah.
And Ontario isn't doing perfect.
What
but they've
conference
really improved.
is it, Ontario?
So Ontario is going to provide all the Eastern Conference for the preliminary round. We have a play-in round this year because the NHL wasn't satisfied with the regular season final standings. So there are going to be 8 additional teams, 4 per conference, that make the postseason. And the initial round is going to be called a play-in round, where top 4 teams by point percentage each conference, they get a bye. They're going to do a little round robin, each within their conference, just to get some warm-up games in. But the other 8 teams, points percentage wise below the top 4, are going to do a basically what would look like a first round if there were no top 4 teams.
So wait, sorry to cut you off there.
No worries.
Why is the NHL being so complicating with their playoffs? Why isn't it basic? Why? So Oilers can get first round pick, I heard.
Yeah.
Why are they doing it? What is the new CBA you said as well?
Really, a lot of it has to do with, and this is just ties in. Everything ties in with each other. Including how the draft lottery went, how the final standings went, how the NHL assessed what was fair. There were some tight playoff races still to be determined in the NHL and in both conferences, and they weren't comfortable with just going with the top 8 in each. They didn't think that it provided fairness to the other teams that were still competing for a playoff spot. Some had as many as 13 games left, I believe.
Yeah.
There was a lot of room for some movement. So there were at least arguably 4 teams, 2 in each conference, that probably should have been extended to the playoffs, to a play-in round to see where they would have gone.
Yeah.
But they did an additional 4 after that, And it's a little controversial, but I mean, the NHL is going to be losing a lot of money this year, because of games that weren't played, attendances that aren't going to be made, even postseason attendances. They're going to be
Didn't the NHL only have like 13 games left?
13
I
games
know.
with
I
all
know.
the postseason games
I
too.
get.
Yeah,
Okay,
so
okay,
all the
okay, okay.
postseason games are going to be without attendance, obviously, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's 13 games, 11 to 13 games, or 10 to 13
revenue.
games. No revenue from the gate, and the NHL is a very gate-driven league. Unlike something like football, where if there was no, and I mean, they make a ton of money from putting all those butts in the seats in the NFL, or in college. Obviously, in college is obviously you can't do college without the butts in the seats. There aren't as many amenities as the NFL has in terms of advertising, but like the NFL can survive without the gate revenue, and the gate revenue would probably exceed the NHL too. But the NFL has enough other revenue just to be able to move forward, even if they had nobody going. The NHL is very gate driven. I've heard anywhere from 40 to 60%. 30 to 60% of the revenue generated in the league comes from the gate, and all the money that is made in the postseason is profit, really. For the league, there's certainly not as much that is paid out to the players during that time. All the players' paychecks stop at the end of the regular season because not all the players make the postseason. So a lot of money comes in the postseason, and there's going to be no fans this year. They're not going to play those last 13, 11 games, depending on the team or whatever. They're not going to play any of those games, so they're not going to get the gate or any of the advertising revenue for those. But they created this extra round to help with the making sure that it's fair who gets in. I mean, it's a little different. They're going to be doing a best of 5 series for the each of the 4 series in each conference. And the Oilers are participating in that. They were the best team in terms of points percentage and where they were compared to their conference that has to participate in this. But we're going to be playing the Chicago Blackhawks, and Chicago was out. But Chicago's a big market. They're one of the 4 teams that I said is being brought in for a revenue perspective. That's Chicago, that's the New York Rangers, Chicago Blackhawks, New York Rangers, Montreal Canadiens, all huge. Those must be all 3 of those must be in the top 6 in terms of revenue created for the league. And the Arizona Coyotes, which are a team that has often been supported by the league in terms of finances. So, I mean, for that team to be in helps that team and financially, and it needs all the help it can get. So those 4 teams, it was extended 4 more teams than really a lot of people thought should have, but that's more games, that's more advertising, that's more commitments they're able to live up to by having these extra games and by having this extra round. They're in some ways able to recuperate not the gate revenue, but some of the advertising dollars and their commitments to regional broadcasts this way. Then they go into the playoffs. Regional broadcasts don't apply as much there. It's national broadcasts. And then by having the playoffs, you fulfill all those advertising obligations. Aside from the gate, you make up a whole bunch of their revenue that they were set to lose. So, they tied, to be able to get here, they had to tie in a new CBA. So they took the time here and they said, look, the financial landscape has changed for the NHL significantly. And so
why couldn't the CBA wait until the season was over?
Not only because this is what they wanted to do. They wanted to negotiate the best deal for both sides. And so by tying it to by the return to play, they were able to say, okay, well, we can reasonably expect to get this much revenue back this year. Of the $1 billion or so I've heard estimated that they could lose, they might make up to 100 or 150 to 250 million of that back by proceeding with what they're going to do. And by knowing that and having that certainty, by getting that return to play, they can tie in and have a little bit of a better idea of what some of the financials might look like in the coming season. So by doing that with the new CBA under a memorandum of understanding, what they've done is they've frozen the cap. They've taken away some of the privileges that the Players Association would have had to artificially inflate it, basically for for the players, there's something called escrow. I'm sure that this might be in other leagues too. I'm not sure if it's in the NBA.
Yes, it is.
They've capped escrow at 20%, which is actually very favorable to the players.
Is that an increase from the last one?
Yeah, so escrow has typically been about 10%.
Yeah.
And in several years, the players get some of that back.
Yeah.
It does seem to be that especially because the players the Players Association could artificially increase the cap by, I think, like something like 5%. If they chose to vote on every year.
Mm-hmm.
Escrow is there to have a little bit of room. If they don't meet their projected revenues, because they've entered into a 50-50 split, an agreement. If they don't make their projected revenues, escrow is supposed to help take care of some of that, and then they don't get paid whatever they didn't earn or on that. So, yeah, no, the memorandum of understanding allowed them to alter the next 2 years a little bit of the salary cap, extend it for another 4 years, and so 6 more years of labor peace in the NHL. This is actually the first time that Commissioner Gary Bettman, who was formerly of the NBA, has been able to get to the end of a CBA contract and not have a labor stoppage, either through owner lockout or a player strike. In this case, it's one of those times where the ownerships and the players union, which have typically not had very good relationships, not been able to get things done in a timely manner, we're able to take this time and see that the common problem was going to be the revenue lost and the COVID epidemic here, pandemic, and so they were able to try to find something that was mutually beneficial to them. A lot of the players, I mean, like, I think that's something like even understanding how you're going to get a new CBA, labor peace, and the ability to compete for the Stanley Cup this year, and a concept of when next year was going to start. For some players, that's a lot for the players.
Yep.
And ownership is if you really break it down, ownership is winning in the CBA. But by being able to do this, you still had 22% of the players that voted against this. It was only a 78% vote to be able to complete the memorandum of understanding, the CBA.
This is crazy, the timing of all this.
Yeah.
Like, to do this right before the season's supposed to come back, like, I just think that's absolutely crazy that this couldn't wait.
Well,
this couldn't wait till this at least this COVID season was finished. Do you understand what I mean?
Yeah. Well, a lot of it was protection for the owners, and this is why it's in the end run it's considered an owner friendly deal. This is protection for the owners because escrow was only written to be a certain amount. The players were allowed to artificially inflate the cap. All of these things could have protected in some ways players' salaries a lot more than the situation actually will be moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
But if not, if you had just gone on with the current CBA, if the players had allowed to just play out the current CBA, maybe they would have potentially been able to make a little bit more money, but then you would have had major labor problems on the CBA following up. And the owners wanted to say, hey, let's get back to hockey. We want to start recouping the money, but we want to have a plan to see how this is going to go forward, cost certainty. So among all of the things that happened was with this tournament is you touched on it a little bit, is that it altered the draft lottery. Yeah. And what was the only, I know you had one takeaway at least. What was the takeaway you have so far from the draft lottery?
I didn't like it.
What do you know about it?
Well, I watched a little bit of it, and I could see, was it the Kings that got second?
The Kings got second place.
And I could see how upset their front office was with getting second, because they obviously probably had a horrible season, right?
They did have a bad season.
Yeah, so they were expecting to be up there, and now you're telling me the Oilers have a chance to get first overall now?
Yeah. So the way that the draft lottery went was normally in the lottery you have what teams are out of the playoffs, right? With the way that we're doing this play-in round now, there are still 8 teams yet to be determined that would normally be in this pool of teams that have the opportunity to move up to the first, second, or third spot. Okay. All right. So the 7 teams that aren't going to be participating in the postseason, they were given their regular odds to get the first, second, or third pick.
Yeah.
And the other 8 teams that were to be determined were just assigned a random letter and a random percentage, and they weren't even really, there wasn't really even associated technically. The letters and the percentages that letter was drawn weren't really associated with any team, because the way they did it is that if any one of these random letters that were applied to whichever one of these 8 teams that loses in the initial play-in round were to win, what they're going to do is they're going to actually have a second draft lottery to see who gets this pick in the top 3, who gets this lottery slot.
Sorry to stop you. As an NHL fan, do you like this? This is ridiculous.
It's complex.
Bro.
It's complex, but it's honestly fair. So let's take a look at the Edmonton Oilers, for instance. Let's take a look at the Edmonton Oilers, for instance. You know, we talked about how the Chicago Blackhawks were one of those markets that probably shouldn't even really be in this tournament.
Yeah.
You know, they had something like a 1. I don't even think they had a 2% chance to make the playoffs. You know, they weren't theoretically eliminated, but they were done. You know, we're talking about they needed to win all of their games and get some help in terms of which teams lost. And we're talking like 1 in 100 for them to make the playoffs. They were done with whatever many games they had left, 12, 13, who knows, in and around there. They were done. Okay. And so if Edmonton were to lose to Chicago, and Chicago Blackhawks, people that know hockey, this team has won 3 Stanley Cups in the last decade.
Yeah.
They're one of the more accomplished teams, and they still have something like 4 or 5 of the players that have won those cups.
Yeah.
I mean, including like Jonathan Toews, the captain of the team, Team Canada, Patrick Kane, probably the best American player in the whole world right now. I mean, it's him or Austin Matthews. And right now, body of work would say Patrick Kane.
Yeah.
And they have their cup winning goaltender, Corey Crawford, who has some sort of potential injury or has had to sit out early here in training camp. So I'm not actually sure if he's going to be able to participate or at what point he is. Mm-hmm. That would be a huge blow. They have they have backup problems. Their backup Malcolm Subban is not yet proven yet. He's a top prospect that has had some good stuff and some bad stuff happen early on in his NHL career. Yeah. But they have Duncan Keith, Brent Seabrook looks like he might come back and play, and Brent Seabrook's not the same player he was, but I mean, he's a veteran and he's a leader. And there are times when he might hurt a team on the ice, but there are definitely times he could help. And he's won 3 Stanley Cups with them. They also have, I think they have Brandon Saad. He might have won 1 or 2 with them. I'm not sure how many of them he won. But they've got these guys. They've got guys that have won multiple cups.
Definitely have way more experience than the Oilers.
They do in terms of postseason. I mean, like there's so if they were to win and the Oilers would cry foul. I mean, I just told you, like they were actually second in their division. Okay. All right. But there were 3 teams in the other Western Conference division with a better points percentage than them. Yeah. Just the way, and it all came down to the last game of the season too. The Oilers could have been a team with a higher point percentage than the team that ultimately was 1 ahead of them, Dallas. But in the first intermission of their last game, they found out the NBA canceled their season. Yeah. The rest of that game was all messed up. You know, I mean, I've heard stories about them going to the face-off circle at the beginning of the second period, and 2 stars talk to each other. One of them says to the other, he says, "So did you hear the NBA just shut down?" It was a messed up period. I mean, imagine playing hockey when you just found out that the whole NBA just shut down because of COVID. And you know your commissioner used to be for the NBA. NHL and the NBA follow in a lot of ways lock and step in terms of the way. NHL is usually the follower. NBA is obviously in almost all cases the premier league in terms of the commissioner and the way that they shape their league. NHL follows a lot of what the NBA's leads are in a lot of ways. But so that when you see here the NBA just shut down, and even sport-wise, they're one of the more comparable sports to hockey. Yeah. You know, I mean, certainly there's a lot of difference, but there are some same. The Oilers lost that game. If they had won it, they would have been one of these teams that doesn't have to participate in the playoff round. So let's just say they lose to Chicago, right? Yeah. Chicago wasn't even supposed to be there. How fair would you think that was, right? So it doesn't matter where you finished. If you lose this play-in round, you get one of the bottom 15 picks. Okay. Let's say, so I mean the Oilers, who would have been picking something like, I don't know, 21 overall, right? I mean, now the worst that they could pick if they lose is something like 15.
So even though I don't like the setup, it does make sense.
So yeah,
because I didn't know Blackhawks weren't going to make the like for NBA, like teams like that they're not in the bubble that they
Mhm.
have right now. They're at
Mhm.
home. You know, they're not coming. They don't care about revenue. They don't care if you're a major city. You're not in the playoffs. You know what I
I
mean?
heard a lot of the stars quit on some of those teams, and they're just like, okay, I guess we're not going to go. Is that how it went?
They didn't quit. It's just some teams.
They
Yeah,
opted out.
if you're the on the bottom teams, and yeah, like some players decided to stay home, but no, not major names. But you know what I mean?
Just speaking briefly on that, with regards to the Oilers, one of their players has decided to opt out. They traded a conditional pick for a veteran player, defenseman named Mike Green. I believe he's led the league in points.
Okay.
It was a while ago, but points as a defenseman.
Okay, I'm like
Points
okay.
as a defenseman. And so he's not the point producer he was, but he's a veteran. And he can move the puck. He can skate okay. He's decided to opt out for family reasons, and you know what? There's been a lot of support for that. Different people opt out for different reasons, health reasons, family reasons. So,
Yeah.
you know, you respect that, and that's just one of the things in the Oilers front. But yeah, so whoever of these teams that ends up, pardon me, losing in the play-in round has the option to be is going to get a top 15 pick. And so one of the things that they're going to do, like you said, the first overall pick is going to one of the teams that is going to be in the play-in round. It's going to lose in the play-in round. There are 8 teams with the 8 teams that lose in the playoff rounds are going to go to a second draft lottery. If let's say all 3 of the top 3 picks had been these letters assigned for the random teams, if they'd all been drawn, then they would have picked 3 teams that would have picked from in the top 3. But as it turns out, only the first overall pick from the top 3 teams or from the top 3 lottery selections went to a team that's not currently already out of the playoff format. So the first overall pick is going to go to one of the 8 teams that loses, Chicago or the Oilers. Whichever one loses has a 1 in 8 chance to select that first overall pick. This year it's going to be a high quality player. Edmonton fans know Taylor Hall, for instance, as our best first overall pick. That wasn't Connor McDavid, obviously. Mm-hmm. And I'm just talking about not first round, but first overall. We had 4 of them, so we did have a few. But yeah, he's expected to be a more impactful player than Taylor Hall over the course of his career. He's not expected to be a Connor McDavid. He's not expected to be a Connor McDavid. Okay. He's not expected to be in that level. But yeah, I know somewhere between there. So a highly impactful player. Yeah, whichever team ends up drafting him is gonna be a team that also got to participate in this year's postseason.
Okay.
So 1 in 8.
Well, that's you covered a lot for the NHL, and a lot of us didn't know all that stuff. So, like, really, thank you for your outlook on the whole NHL. But I do have one last question for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because we got to focus on our Oilers,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
What do you think COVID helped the Oilers? Like, did they need that break? Were they one of the teams that's going to benefit from being off this time?
So yes and no. The ways that it didn't help the Oilers were that the Oilers were the best team in the league on the power play at the time that the league stopped. They actually have the second best power play. I think it's the second best power play historically, like since the league started keeping track of that thing. Okay. And they were second in the league in the penalty kill, so their special teams were rolling, really, really doing well, and you know they had a lot of chemistry with certain players on certain lines. Now, where it's going to help the Oilers is some of their players that had gotten healthy. There are other teams that have had this too. Yeah. A lot of other teams. Almost every team is going to come in perfectly healthy. Totally healthy. Yeah. Almost. There's been a player here or there. Tampa Bay Lightning high-profile player Steven Stamkos hurt himself somewhere during training recently, and he's expected to come back for the playoffs, but he's not going to participate in the training camp. So I mean, like, there are exceptions, but Connor McDavid, as many are aware, suffered a knee injury in the very last game of last season, and he spent the whole offseason rehabbing his knee. He took a lot of risks with the way that he rehabbed it, and they paid off for him to be able to come back and play at a very high level to start the season, and he got better as the season went on. But at no point this season, and I've been on the record on this before. I mean Twitter, but I mean like you can look. It's at KJAM. It's at Kevin Jameson 86 on Twitter. Hit me up there. But
seriously, go look.
but yeah, no. So Connor McDavid hasn't been at 100% at any point this year, and he still looked like the best player in the world. Yeah. He still looked like the best player in the NHL. He did have a little unrelated injury in the middle of the season. Him and Leon Draisaitl were vying back and forth for the scoring lead during a lot of the season. But then Connor got injured. Leon went on a heater. And then Leon, I mean, he just took off. Leon's going to win. He wins the Art Ross this year for the league's highest point total. And he's got a very good chance at the Hart Trophy, voted by the media as the player that's the most valuable to his team. And a very good chance at the Ted Lindsay Trophy, which is the best player in the league as voted on by the players in the league. Leon Draisaitl has a strong chance at both. But if Connor had been healthy, it probably would have been Connor's trophy. Okay. So Connor missed some games. Connor was fighting a little bit of injury here and there. I mean, just like not fighting injury, but just he wasn't at 100%. Connor McDavid, from what I understand, trained hard these last 4 months. Yeah. So it's beyond now like rehab. It's like off-season training to get stronger, and he's in his prime in terms of his ability to elevate to a new level through training. So the Connor McDavid you see in the playoffs could be an absolute monster. Now there's no doubt that the Oilers are going to put together some highly offensive players with Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, Kyler Yamamoto has done very well. Mm-hmm. There are options that the Oilers can put together that will create a lot of offense, but there is the potential that you may see the best Connor McDavid you've ever seen before in these playoffs. That's a very exciting thing for Edmonton fans, and it's something that when you take a look at where Edmonton already was, could mean, well, you know, I mean, like if Edmonton was that good with Connor McDavid not really at 100%, not really at the peak of his training, where could they be if he comes back and he is? Yeah. So most people have Edmonton, even given Chicago's playoff experience, as the favorite, and they expect them to move on. And
yes, we do.
And I mean, like people are hoping for a long run this year. I mean, the city could use it, the organization could use it, obviously, but very nice to know that all the players are going to be from the Western Conference are going to be coming, that are participating in the tournament anyways, are going to be coming to Edmonton. They're going to see it in the summertime. They always see it in the wintertime when the weather is terrible. It's not very good to attract free agents, but if you knew that your off season could be spent in Edmonton, like we have nice summers.
Yeah, we do.
Very nice summers. And so free agents are like, you know, potential free agents down the road, or players signing contracts, and
I didn't even think of that.
Yeah,
but you're right. You're right.
Players signing contracts that are, and they have they're able to in no trade, put it together a no trade list. Maybe Edmonton won't arrive on those no trade lists as often, because they know in the off season when they're spending all their time with their family, you know, that Edmonton is a really great place to live. It's a great place to be outside and doing activities. We have a lot of festivals in the summer. You're not going to see those this year. None of us did because of COVID. But Edmonton's got a lot of great festivals, especially when you consider, you know, the size of the city. The amount of festivals that we put on is just outrageous. Their variety is outstanding, and the food has gotten a lot better in Edmonton.
True, and if you are on the Oilers, you get treated pretty well here. I don't know compared to other cities.
You're gonna get to see the facilities a lot more, and then those last two Eastern Conference teams that come over so Toronto is handling the Eastern Conference teams for the preliminary round, and round 1 and round 2. But when you get to the third round, the conference finals, that is happening in Edmonton. The last two Eastern Conference teams, they'll move over to Edmonton, and then you'll have both the Eastern Conference Finals, Western Conference Finals happening in Edmonton, and you'll have the Stanley Cup Finals happening in Edmonton. So some really good players are going to get to see, you know, what this city is all about in the summertime, and what it's all about in terms of what the facilities have to offer. And there's a lot of things going on with the Ice District downtown. And yeah, it's a really a good opportunity to showcase to their families. Some of their families are going to come down. They won't be a part of the bubble, but I'm sure some families are going to be coming to Edmonton. And people make a lot of fun of Jason Kenney's promo video for Edmonton.
That was funny.
It showed places all over Alberta. When did the Edmonton get the mountains? Man. But they're 4 or 5 hours away. Don't worry about it.
Watch that video. You guys gotta watch that video.
Yeah, Jason Kenney promoting Edmonton when he's really the videos for Alberta, really.
Yeah.
But yeah, some families are gonna be able to take advantage of coming to the hub city. They're not gonna be spending their whole time in the city. I hope some of them do head out to check out Jasper or Banff or some of the other things. There's been Sylvan Lake's been in the news recently having too many people out there.
That was intense.
Yeah, it reminded me of Toronto a month or two ago.
With the beach. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, so it was a bad sight at Sylvan. But Sylvan Lake, if you go during the week, maybe catch some mild weather as opposed to some like really intensely good weather. Sylvan Lake's a great place to go. So, hit it up on a downtime.
Look at him try to pull in the players right now.
Yeah. And, and their families, just come here and enjoy it. And the players are in the hub, in the bubble, they're going to have the opportunity to do some golfing. There's going to be some indoor stuff for them to do, obviously. And there's, I think they have some courtyard outside, just right on campus there in the Ice District where they can go and do stuff. So,
yeah.
Edmonton's going to provide... we only get in the conversation for this because of the new Ice District.
Oh, cool.
The old arena and stuff is like
no, that wouldn't have done
it. We're not talking about this. So
yeah,
everybody that's covering the NHL playoffs during there is going to be the conference finals, Stanley Cup finals here from Edmonton. Western Conference here from Edmonton. They're going to be showing shots of the city, and surrounding areas. Hopefully the citizens of Edmonton do their best as we have been to keep coronavirus to a minimum. Wear masks in public. Spend time with. Don't spend a lot of time with people outside of your cohort. I know that's not a thing that's being as enforced as much anymore, but like you and I, we've spent some time with each other. I don't spend a whole bunch of time with a whole bunch of people.
Neither do I.
So, it's I think it's very important to be able to do everything you can to keep each other safe, to keep the whole community safe, to show off the city well, in terms of how we continue to tackle this pandemic, and then let the rest of the city speak for itself, because I think that. Edmonton's an underrated city in terms of the amenities that we have for the average person. And, some people have been coming here for years to work, and then they find out, and then they stay. Edmonton's been growing, and it's not just because of the work. It's because they get here, and, well, maybe you don't want to go back after.
Yeah. So. We love our city. But yeah, man, thanks for coming out.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for the great outlook on the whole NHL. Yeah. I learned a lot even just listening to you, and as you guys know, he knows what he's talking about. You totally went through it like I would have for the NBA. I know my NBA.
I went through it quick. I mean? Just watch this on 0.75 speed. 0.5 speed. What do you say there again? So.
But yeah, man, thanks for coming out. So where can we find you again?
Yeah, so at Kevin Jameson 86 on Twitter, JAMIESON. That's like the vitamins, not like the whiskey.
Oh my god.
Yeah, throw that out there. But yeah, no, that's where I do my social. I talk a lot about the NHL and this and that else, but it's my personal Twitter, and it's where you go to talk hockey, talk Oilers, and we'll be following and covering it the whole way through.
All right, man. Well, thanks for everyone coming out. My name is Jerome. Y'all may know me as Breezy. This is Kevin Jameson, KJAM. And we're live here in Edmonton, Alberta. Be sure to subscribe to the channel. Show love. And we out.